Okay, good evening, everyone. Acting Mayor Jeff Bateman in the big chair again tonight. Mayor Tate has just returned from Cambodia yesterday, and she's, after a 24-hour journey home, she's been dealing with minimal sleep, jet lag, and seems to have caught a cold along the way. So, to your great disappointment, you've got me again. All right, so first of all, I'd like to formally acknowledge that the land on which we gather tonight is the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Sooke First Nation, whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. Just before we get started, I want to remind everyone before we get going here of two critical open houses in the coming week as we develop our next transportation and parks and trails master plans. So this Wednesday from 4 to 8 p.m., these two plans are being discussed together. So you will have opportunities to address both of the plans. This is this Wednesday, 4 to 8 at Edward Milne Community School, and Sunday from 2 to 6 at Sea Park. So these are critical pieces of the Plan Sooke Now official community plan process, and we're hoping for a really strong turnout. You can also share your thoughts online with a really kind of nifty app where you can drag and drop icons onto a Sooke map and indicate exactly where you see issues related to parks, connector roads, crosswalks, you name it. Okay. The other two other things I would just quickly want to mention. The Affordable Housing Committee meets this Thursday at 1 o'clock here in the Council chambers. That'll be their first meeting since, I think, October. And that's, as everyone knows, a very critical issue everywhere in BC and Canada and in Sooke. And next Monday night here in Council chambers, we will have a special edition of the Community of the Whole where I believe 33 applicants for community grants will be presenting their ideas and requests. So we'll get underway with, do we have new business supplementary information? Yes, we do. So this needs to be added to the agenda package. So in the approval of the agenda with this new business, can I have a motion? I have called the meeting to order, Councillor Parkinson. So a motion. Al Beddoes, Councillor Beddoes has moved. Second?
To add these items.
To add with these items. Megan, Councillor McMath has seconded. We'll move on to the adoption of minutes. We have 3 meetings here. Can I have a motion to approve these 3? Councillor Beddoes, did you?
The minutes?
Yeah.
Yes, I move that we approve all 3 minutes, May 9th, January 14th, and January 21st. So moved.
Okay, seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. All approved? Yeah. Okay. And just for the record, the May 9th meeting minutes are now being adopted. The mayor of the time failed to sign off on that. I think that was just a housekeeping situation. Item 6.1, recommendations from last week's Committee of the Whole meeting. Do we have any discussion on this subject? Councillor St. Pierre? Could you turn your mic on there?
The fourth recommendation, I believe, was that Council place a moratorium on retail cannabis. We've had a staff recommendation to use a different process or different tool. So I don't think we want to move forward with that one.
Okay. So yes, so we'd like to, Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff, when I made the motion that we hire an arborist, I would like to state that it could be a journeyman horticulturist as well, so it doesn't have to necessarily be an arborist, and we could probably get quotes from people in town. Thank you.
So to the chair,
Yes,
I
Councillor.
understand that we are going to table 6.1 until we get a staff report. Is that the idea? Yeah.
Your Worship, there's an alternate motion that I believe is on the... so this is... Oh, that's the first motion, okay. So the motion that I believe is on the table is for the first two endorsement of the first... Are we doing it all together? Yes, so the Councillor Parkinson's motion concerns the first three bullets in the meeting, or in the meeting minutes. That Council received the Lot A charrette presentation from Key Corp Planning for information, and that Council endorsed the general concept plan as presented and direct staff and Key Corp Planning to forward the project for further public feedback and final review, and further that Council direct staff to hire an arborist to walk the Lot A property and identify trees for preservation, and in this instance she would like
And that would be my motion.
the horticulturalist as well. So that would be the motion currently in play.
Okay. So that takes us, okay, we have a seconder in Councillor St. Pierre. Any discussion? No? So we will vote on these first three up to the cannabis retail stores portion of this. So all in favor? Okay. So moving into that Council accept the cannabis retail stores proposed application process and regulations report for information. Now we're going to strike the next piece of that, piece around the moratorium. And then we have the final chunk of this, which do I need to read into the record?
It would be helpful.
Okay. The Council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaws and or policies pertaining to the regulation of an application process for cannabis retail stores, modeled on option 2 of the report, with the following specifications. Cannabis retail store definition added to zoning bylaw, excluded from general retail definition. Permitted use in 2 zones, C2 general commercial and CTC town center mixed use. Minimum separation distance from school properties is 300 meters.
Sorry to interject.
Oh, Pat.
It's the one that's currently on the screen. It's been the one that's in the regular agenda package has been struck.
Okay.
And there's a new one that is on the screen if you can read it. Or
Okay.
Okay, that'd be great.
All right. So rewind. Another 3 minutes of our lives lost. That Council directs staff to prepare the necessary text amendments to bylaw number 600, zoning bylaw 2013, pertaining to the regulation of cannabis retail stores with the following specifications. Cannabis retail store definition added to zoning bylaw, excluded from general retail definition. Add cannabis retail store as a permitted use in the C2 general commercial zone, but restricted to the legal properties of the 3 existing operating cannabis stores.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor McMath. All approved? Discussion? Tony, Councillor St. Pierre.
I've been thinking a lot about this particular process and what we went through at our last meeting with regards to the cannabis retail. And one of the things I realized was that I really appreciated the work that the staff had put in, but that I felt it would be incumbent on our council to decide how often we want to put future council in a position of having to deal with restrictions. We can always add additional restrictions if we find that there's a real problem, and obviously we have to do due diligence if we perceive a really serious problem. But I think in a general sort of way, we have an opportunity to reduce 400-page agendas, and generally make the work of council and of the district more efficient. If we can actually, when we're doing this sort of work, pare it down to what's really just needed. And so it was just this thing that I really wanted to just bring to our attention. I didn't know if there was a better place to do it, but it gave me an opportunity to mention that. We've got some excellent staff putting together recommendations. If they've got something efficient and our diverse perspectives and viewpoints don't find any additional risks, then I think we just need to consider them carefully and see what we can do. But there it is. Thank you.
Councillor? No. Okay. All right. I believe that the plan going forward will be to bring a proposed staff bylaw to council on February 25th for first and second reading, following which there will be a public hearing, so everyone will have a chance to weigh in. So on that, can we have a vote? All approved? Okay. All right. Thank you. So we're going into the delegations portion of the night, and I'm happy to introduce BC Transit's Adriana McMullen, Senior Planner, I believe is your title. Yes, welcome back, I should say.
Good evening. Thanks so much for having me here, Council and your acting worship. I'm going to try and go through this quickly. I've promised to. Some of the slides at the front of this are slides you've seen at the first presentation in September. Do I click through here? Oh, there we go. Perfect. What am I pointing at? Pointing at you? Yep, there it goes. Oh, perfect. Great. So as you know, as many of you know, we have a 25-year-long transit strategy for the Victoria Transit System. And a large component of the Transit Future Plan are local area transit plans. And these are plans that work over a 3 to 7 year long time frame, and they define the service and infrastructure strategies for specific areas of the region. If you were to look at them in comparison to municipal plans, they might be somewhere around a local area plan, like a neighborhood plan. We at BC Transit are doing 9 local area plans in total. We currently have 5 active. The Sooke plan is one of these 5, and it is currently underway. This past, there we go. So there's 3 main goals in the Sooke Local Area Transit Plan. One of them is to identify the opportunities for new transit serving local travel needs within Sooke and also improving connections to the regional scale transit service. Second is to establish an order of priority for how we would develop and improve the transit routes. And lastly is to identify the infrastructure that would be needed to support both the transit passengers and the future transit operations. We are nearing the halfway point of the plan process, so we were out to see council in September, and then over October we conducted phase 1 of our public consultation. And during that, we had 4 separate events, open houses using our Transit Future bus, and spoke with over 135 attendees. We also had an online survey that was very successful. We had 325 hits and 225 completions, which in the world of online surveys is not bad. And coming up later this February, we have our workshop, which will be a stakeholder workshop, invitation only, where we will go through some activities to help start designing some route concepts. I'm not tall enough. Thank you. So what did we hear during our engagement? We heard things at a few different scales. So in the orange, you'll notice comments related to regional scale service. Now, Sooke has a lot of regional scale service, so this is what people can grasp onto and comment on. It's very, very well used. 12% of your trips from Sooke into town are actually made by transit, which is phenomenal. It's higher than the median use of transit in the region. So people would like to see more direct service to the core of Victoria. We heard that from about 2/3 to 3/4 of the respondents. People would like to see better connections to key destinations such as CFB Esquimalt and also the post-secondary institutions. Oh. Okay, can you still still see it? It's just this one? Okay, there we go. I'll look at that screen over there. We also consulted with Beecher Bay First Nation and Spirit Bay, and they're also interested in having some basic connectivity. In terms of the local scale of service, people were most interested in local routes that would connect them to the regional routes, and thus avoid having to drive down to the park and ride and maybe save a car for a family, which is very practical. There's also interest in having local service within Sooke that would be operating at about the hour level. Right now, you have 4 trips a day on some routes and about 8 trips a day on other routes, so it's a very basic service. And there was also some interest in local routes that went in both directions. Currently, your local routes tend to work in a loop function. And if we can go to the next one. Oh, no. Oh, goodness. Okay, here we go. And in terms of the infrastructure front, there was a lot of support for transit priority measures. It was really awesome to be out in October because our bus lanes were about to be opened leading into Christmas. So we were able to share the news with the public about that, and now the bus lanes are open, and it's been a very positive response. There's also a lot of interest in better lighting and amenities at some of the existing bus stops that are out there. This is a rural community in some places, and so that's understandable. There's maybe some opportunities there for some improvements. And in terms of customer information, there was a lot of interest in some of the Next Ride technology, which is what will show people or tell people where their bus is in real time. There were some concerns that the cell coverage was spotty in the community, so it might not quite be super accessible. And then also some interests in improving the legibility of the rider's guide, and that there's different variants of the 61 and just having one. Sorry. Thank you. So the next steps we have into this process are our workshop that's coming up on February 13th. If anyone is interested in information, yes?
Is there a possibility of having a different date for that, as council's away at a conference and none of us will be here?
Oh, maybe.
It's AVICC, so it's for the entire region.
I see. Okay. Maybe we can discuss a separate something for council then, so council members who are interested can have an opportunity to participate in some of the concept development. Yeah, that's noted. Thank you. And then the workshops that we do with the general public, we also hold with transit operators who are familiar with Sooke. So they either live in Sooke or they drive the Sooke routes. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ms. McMullen. I Googled you. You've been doing these for a few years now.
I have.
Yes. Okay. And this February 13th event, this is a stakeholder workshop where you're really relying on bus riders, right?
It's a mix of community members. You know, there's a lot of potential transit and latent demand in the community that we'd be hoping to tap as well. So it's not just people who are currently using transit, but people who would like to use transit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Now, any questions? Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Would you be giving a report to council after you had this event with stakeholders?
We'll be producing an engagement report in which we'll start to put in some of the information that's coming out of those workshops, and that's something that would be produced prior to the final plan being produced. So yes, we can make that available to council. Yeah.
Did things change quite dramatically in the Langford or West Shore upon the application of the master plan, the Langford West Shore Local Area Transit Plan? Can we expect some significant changes?
You can expect probably a more visible change. So
yes.
The community of Sooke, if it were another community in the province of British Columbia, something like, it's a little bit bigger than Terrace, for instance, has 5 bus routes that operate all day long, almost hourly. So there's really a huge opportunity to introduce a very functional local service here. I think, you know, what you have right now is very, very basic, and the demand and the interest is there. The transit culture is there.
Yes.
So, yeah, we'd like to see that happen, and I think it will.
Yeah. And thank you also for joining us for the Lot A charrette process. And could you reiterate what your idea there was? Perhaps a loop?
Yes, so as the downtown Sooke area continues to further develop, we would be looking to have a stronger transit presence, and along Wadham's Way we would be looking to introduce some sort of a layover transit exchange place where local routes could connect with the regional service, And we would also continue to serve the retail core that is right along Sooke Road on the south half of Evergreen Mall. So that's a great opportunity with that redevelopment, and we're very happy to have been a part of that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can we have a motion to accept this this report? Al? Councillor Beddoes? Okay, and seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. All approved? Yes. Okay. Public question and comment period. So we have 2 minutes per person. Please state your full name, your address, and the agenda item to which you wish to speak. So the mic is open.
If I may also add, Your Chair, that if it's already been discussed in a public hearing, then unfortunately Council's not able to accept any more information following that. So that would just affect Bylaw 726, which is on the agenda for adoption.
Right.
No.
Okay.
I don't think so. Okay, my name is Laura Lemieux. I live at 1600 Harmonies Place. I'm speaking to the council remuneration matter that you're dealing with. Back in 2008, I chaired that council remuneration review committee. I just wanted to give a brief history. It had a very formal, structured process that was overseen by a district staff liaison rather than council or mayor, just to keep an arm's length. Was objectivity and neutrality were very important to the committee at that time. We had very focused outcomes through the terms of reference that were established specifically for the committee. We then did a presentation to council that included an explanation of the committee methodology, recommendations, and we actually produced draft bylaws with the assistance of staff, and that was to go forward to the council. Council considered the submissions, made some amendments to the draft bylaws, and then subsequently voted and created their bylaw. So I was at the 14th of January meeting here in council, listened to the submission. I believe it's well-intentioned. However, it didn't strike me as having the rigor that was applied when we did the 2008 committee. I do believe it suggests there's a need for that type of a review to happen again. Some of the thoughts I had from the January 14th meeting were the interview questions specific to remuneration, or were they part of a general set of questions that covered multiple topics? Who were the committee members that reviewed the money, that what they want to pay, and are any of them connected to the current council or past councils? How was public input obtained? How was their committee formally recognized? And I kind of was wondering, was it a truly transparent and accountable process like we had in 2008? So great lengths were gone to in 2008 to ensure a review process that was objective and not impacted by any bias input. Everything we did was documented by staff and subject to file numbers and accountability. It was all written down and kept. I believe that in matters of money, it is essential that the process be transparent, well-defined, and produce an end result that supports the research that was done. It must be able to withstand scrutiny from the community, i.e. taxpayers, and to instill confidence that the process was fair and objective.
To interrupt you there.
Okay. All right. I just have 2 more lines of recommendations, and I'm done. I took out a whole bunch. So the recommendations that I had, having given some thought to this, was it's pretty obvious that the council needs to recognize there's time for another formal remuneration process to be undertaken. I think it's overdue, and that a formal council remuneration review committee be formed by district staff in a similar manner as the one that was done in 2008. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm very impressed with that bylaw from 2008, so thank you for all your work in making that happen. And later in the evening, we do have an opportunity with 3 staff options, one of which I think is to strike a new committee. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, further comments tonight?
There's no order for this then? I push green?
No, push the button that says talk. You're on. Yeah.
My name is Marilyn Erickson. I live at 5016B, Glints Lake Road, a tenant on the property. And I'm concerned about the Freedom Mobile application. I have some comments about it. We went through this before with Freedom Mobile, and they haven't changed much. They're disguising it as a tree now. None of our comments that were given before to council, and which the previous council turned down the application for, none of them have changed. Property values, sight lines, and mostly safety concerns. It's better to prevent than to cure is an important lesson attributed to Dr. Ramazzini. He was the father of occupational medicine. And we think that you must now consider the same rationale when it comes to placement of large cell towers in populated areas. There are hillsides of unpopulated property around us, both private and crown land, that would be much more suitable. Cell tower acquisition agents, though, go looking for willing property owners with easy access who will accept a large payment and yearly checks for situating a tower like this on their property. In this case, it is smack in the middle of a neighborhood of other rural properties, and 25 of us have signed a petition to object to this new application. Reading through the notes, I see that you have 8 letters of opposition before you that were sent to Freedom Mobile. I have 3 more here. Since 2011, RF radiation is classified as possible human carcinogen by the International Agency on Cancer, which is an agency of the World Health Organization. But based on new animal findings in last year's Ramazzini Institute study, Dr. Palogi has said that the international agency should now consider changing it to a probable human carcinogen. There was a significant increase in the incidence of a rare and malignant form of cancer when exposed to long-term emissions and up to 450 meters. Canada's guidelines are outdated. They're some of the lowest in the world. China, France, England, India.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop you here.
Okay, so all of them have different guidelines. Thanks.
Appreciate the content that the neighborhood has submitted for tonight's discussion. So thank you. Yeah.
Hello. My name is Bevan Bugalki, and I live at 5016 Glens Lake Road. We, the residents of the area and taxpayers, rely on council for our safety, basically, your decisions that are made. We put a lot of trust and responsibility in you for those. And we really feel that this application from Freedom Mobile should be denied a second time. Even more people are opposed to it. The safety concerns are a major issue with all of us. And the research is ever changing. India and Germany have some of the strongest regulations. India has more cell phone users than anyone. They have extended the range for people living near towers. They have found a very heavy negative impact on animals, birds, people, etc. I believe our area is zoned for residential rural, and we moved there for a very specific reason, not to be impeded with towers and noises and things. And there's the information that seems to be coming out daily now is really scary, actually. I am a retired teacher and administrator, and I sat on 2 committees that looked into cell phone tower effects, and in both committees that I was a member of, we decided to take a cautious approach, and all schools should take a cautious approach. These things have an effect. They're just not some kind of a disguised tower, or they could make it into an Eiffel Tower perhaps or something. That's not going to remedy this. We don't really fully understand all of the effects that these things have, but we know they do have an effect. We have expressed legitimate concerns. We have spent hours and hours on research on this. Our science is just as good as theirs. And I think we have to look past the profit motivation of a company. We have good cell phone service out there already. They are in this for profit, and I'm sure they're going to be selling tower space to other individual companies as well.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay. Any other takers? There we are.
Hello, I'm Stephen Saunders, 5016 Glints Lake Road. I'll keep this short and to the point because we've been over all this before at other council meetings. There's been nothing new added to this application, as the thin veil of fake foliage has been suggested on the last application. There is nothing preventing the removal or permanent storm damage of the foliage at a later date. We will still know there is a cell tower behind the facade irradiating us with RF radiation. The Industry Canada organization is probably the only organization in the world that tells us cell phone towers are safe. The rest of the world says they are not. If you check into Industry Canada, you will find that they hired ex-cell phone executives to write their regulations. All of the adjacent property owners and occupants have signed the petition against the base station, with the exception of 2 property owners who are on holidays and won't be back till after the council meeting. It is known that these 2 families are against the tower, as they signed the last petition. They probably don't even know there's a new application. This tower will devalue my property between 20 and 22%, and that's according to Freedom Mobile's own literature. It will irradiate me with unwanted RF radiation and put an offensive view in front of all my windows. We still know it's a cell tower. If you and the mayor, if the acting mayor and councillors have read my letter and seen the photos of telephone pole mounted antenna which were taken in Colwood, you know there is an alternative solution which is lower powered, does not need any council approvals or permits, and is non-intrusive. There is no need for a 150-foot tower with high-powered transceivers. There is only a narrow band of housing along the Sooke Road, and they and the cars traveling the road could be serviced by a telephone pole mounted antenna system, such as in the photos I have supplied. The reason for large towers is so that companies can lease space and make more profit at our expense. Now, there was
Mr.
a letter...
Saunders, your 2 minutes are up, and I don't want to get a reputation for being a lightweight
This is a
here.
life and death thing, and
I
2
know,
minutes is
and
not enough.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Thank you.
I actually got the thing that can detect it. And hi there, I'm Peter Mauck from 7165 Grant Road West, and this is about 10.
Could you repeat your name, sir? I missed that.
Peter Mauck
Peter
from
Mauck.
7165 Grant Road West, and this is about the Freedom Mobile Telecommunications Tower. So I would just like to read Council one thing from Health Canada's own RF exposure microwave limits. Okay, so on the first page in the introduction, number 1, at the bottom of the last paragraph, and this is important, it states, and this is from Health Canada, it must be stressed that Safety Code 6 is based upon established adverse health effects and should be distinguished from some municipal and or national guidelines that are based on social political considerations. And now let me continue. So the next page, number 2, on maximum exposure limits. I'm going to quickly read the paragraph because it's really good. The scientific literature with respect to possible biologic effects of RF fields have been monitored by Health Canada scientists on an ongoing basis. So they're saying they're on top of this. Since the last version of Safety Code 6 was published in 2009, a significant number of new studies have evaluated the potential for acute and chronic RF field exposures to elicit possible effects on a wide range of biological endpoints, including human cancers, lifetime mortality, tumor initiation, promotion and co-promotion, mutagenicity, DNA damage, EEG activity, memory, behavior, and cognitive functions, gene and protein expression, cardiovascular function, immune response, reproductive outcomes, and perceived electromagnetic hypersensitivity, among others. Numerous authoritative reviews have summarized the current literature. So that's them pretty much stating to you that they are very well aware that it's established adverse health effects. Now, the thing is, especially about the property value, is that it's actually higher. You lose more like 80% of your property value, especially for the reason that you lose your right to reasonable enjoyment, which not only goes into corporate law, but also goes into common law and is a deciding factor. So, and the one thing is that this is a tri-field emitter. It is one of the most sensitive on the market you can get. It's verified by the scientific community for the data it produces. I've actually been recording this. Oh, my 2 seconds, but
You can finish up.
okay. I've been recording the data for months, and if council wants, I can inundate you guys with thousands of pages of documents that have been declassified from the U.S. Navy, DARPA, you name it. The papers would be stacked as high as the Himalayas. So I definitely oppose that tower, just like the one behind CIBC at the BC Telecom. That's a 360 emitter, and actually I watched it, and this, using Health Canada's own calculations, anything over 3 microwatts per meter squared, that's the calculation, does those effects that I stated in the maximum exposure limits. So, and uptown, just by that tower, I hope McDonald's has an employee safety policy about RF exposure, because it maxes out my meter.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Merrick.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Very informative.
It's good. Welcome.
Anna Saunders, 5016 Glens Lake Road. My property is going to be affected by the placement of this tower. I don't want to go through the whole thing that everybody else said, but I find that for the sake of somebody else's convenience, my life is going to be affected. I see absolutely no reason. There are numerous other opportunities to place either the tower somewhere else or use different technology, like the one that my husband provided the pictures of. I think this project is running on greed, basically future earnings from the tower being rented to others, with complete disregard for our health and safety. Now, the owner of the property just stated to my face that he doesn't really care, that it's his property, his money, and he likes it that way. He said there is a letter here from, I think, his wife. Yes, Freedom was on our deck, and they showed us, pointed to a tiny little drone and said, that's what the tower is going to be. Well, that was too ridiculous to even mention. It has no relation to the reality of the tower, who's going to be probably a good 50 or more feet above the tree line. How are you going to disguise it? That's a joke. And they already mentioned that in the first application, it was turned down. I find it very offensive that we have to be running through this again. It affects my health. I'm stressed out. I can't sleep. And they're going to repeat it how many times? Until they get their way? Yeah. It's just not cool.
Hold on a second. Yeah, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Can you tell me approximately how far your deck or your front window will be from this tower? Approximately, maybe your husband can answer it either way.
208 meters.
208 meters.
And it's in direct line with the aerial.
208 meters. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any further comments?
Back to the mayor and council. I'm the actual owner of that property.
Could you give us your name?
Don Oberle,
Don.
and I live at 5154 Sooke Road. I'm speaking to item 10.1. I've owned this property since 1995 and paid taxes. And just let me start out by saying that I do, in fact, support the tower. I did my homework on it, and the tower would be located in the center area of my 11 acres. It's a really big piece of property. It's going to be very, very much to the middle of the property, and visually nobody's going to be able to see this thing. It's going to be hidden. The cell service at my house is inconsistent at best, and we have experienced drop calls in the past. I would benefit myself from having better service. Affordable service would be welcome, and I think it increases safety for the 13,000 some odd Sooke residents. My wife and I are satisfied this tower will meet all of Health Canada's safety codes. We too did a lot of homework on this thing, and we're going to be living closer to that tower than any of these people. And I'm satisfied that there's not going to be any problems. We also feel that the aesthetics of the new design, the monopine tower, it's going to be a full-on looking tree, will blend even better with our rural setting. It will literally blend right in. I think there has to be consideration that Sooke is growing at more than double the national average. So, I mean, we need to make sure that infrastructure keeps up with the growth of the town. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Oberle.
Thank you.
Okay, going once.
Eleanor's 5526 Sooke Road. This is a health issue as well. Why parents should worry about teens and marijuana use. I hope you saw that article in the paper. You talked about cannabis and the regulation and allowing a moratorium. I don't think there should be a moratorium. I think that there needs to be regulations. THC is a fix. If you haven't read this, over the past 2 decades, studies in several countries have found a link between the ingestion of THC and the active ingredients in cannabis, the psychosis, schizophrenia, and violence. And we have a lot of schizophrenia on the streets, by the way. And found that kids who smoked marijuana before age 16 were 4 times likely to develop schizophrenia as people who had never used the drug. We had a young fellow staying with us, a psychologist from Germany last year, and I asked him, do the kids in universities in Germany use pot? And he says, no. We all know that the use of pot it brings out, if there's any mental illness in your families, it'll bring it out. It's just not something you do. It's not common like here. And as we heard tonight, the studies that have been done with RF, they know the consequences. So I would say there shouldn't be a moratorium on illegal cannabis operators. They need to be regulated. When you hear things like, get your happy, this will make you really, really happy. Oh, really? And things like that. I mean, it's targeted at young people, and they're the ones that are at risk. I mean, that the law was even made for 19 and over. When children are at risk till 28, it's very serious. And I think we really have to be diligent in this and not allow them to operate without being regulated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Lewis. Any more questions or comments? You are allowed back, I believe, for a second go round. Just one more. In our mini public hearing here tonight. Thank you.
Just a quick one.
Okay.
One thing I want to talk about. I'm Peter Malk, 7165 Grant Road West, and it's about the towers. mainly uptown and the ones being distributed around the Legion as well. They actually just came online 2 days ago. I recorded it. You can't even be at Serious Coffee without being maxed out. Like, it's absolutely starting to get ridiculous up there. So I'd like to actually invite council for an experiment. We could do, well, it's very simple. We can do one of two things. I can grab one of the few microwaves I have in my workshop, override the safety switch, and you guys can stick your hand in there at high for 1 minute. And that's only 110 volt. The thing with these towers is that they are wired with cable that is 3 times thicker than our power lines. They're rated for megawatts, is the thing. And the funny thing is, it's actually can be used as area denial device. So the second experiment would be the most easiest one, where council would come and stand with me for 1 hour in between the Legion and the buy and sell, where it maxes out the meter between the Legion and that tower up at CIBC, and we can stand there for 1 hour and see how you feel. I, of course, will have my tower shield so I can block from it, because every time I go uptown, you just feel disgusting. The first symptoms, usually you feel your stomach starts boiling, you feel nauseous, dizzy, kind of sluggish. There's many good points about the immediate effects of immediate exposure, and with that tower up there, just think, every time you go up Village Foods, it's not the same thing. So let's say your milk, you got a milk jug, it's not the same by the time you get it home because it gets hit by that. And the thing is with microwaves and the inconsistencies of Health Canada's Safety Code 6 is that they like to say there's limited exposure, but microwaves affect you immediately. It can be for a fraction of a millisecond, and you will get affected. Your body picks up on it immediately. A lot of things they say is about rodent testing, but the funny thing is a rodent is a mammal, and so are we. And we actually have a higher body density, so we have more mass to get affected. And the frequencies are both... Oh, I'm out.
Okay, you are. But thank you very much.
I could go on
Give
for
me
hours.
something to think about next time I'm at the Stick in the Mud Cafe.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and I guess the question is it too late? It may well be, given how much we've been exposed to. But no, we'll get one more question here on this subject, and then we'll let you in as well. Thank you.
That's Stephen Saunders again, 5016 Glints Lake Road. The letter from the Oberleys states that the drone couldn't be seen. The drone was 13 3/4 inches wide and 4 inches high at 208 meters. You could see it. The tenants that sent the letter have been told that they will be safe because they're at the base of the tower and the RF signal goes right over their heads, straight into our house. Okay, thank you.
Our final question tonight.
Chairman and Council, Erica Ridgick with Freedom Mobile at 221 West Esplanade in North Vancouver. And, thank you for the support that Sooke has given to Freedom Mobile as the fourth national carrier, working very hard to serve Canadians by having really affordable service. At the same time, the communities in which we have to locate our infrastructure are of deep concern to us because they are also our potential customers. So it is unfortunate that there is some discord around this proposal. This is the last of our Sooke proposals for our network infrastructure build. We're excited that we're going to be launching in Victoria next month, and then we'll continue to offer that service through to Sooke is 100% our intention. This location is the link to the two adjoining sites, so without it, there is not the opportunity to properly serve Sooke or to provide that contiguous coverage. Additionally, there is a lot of discussion about health and safety. Our obligation is to rely on Health Canada and the standard. The standard was updated in 2015. In all the predictive modeling, this location is less than 1% of the standard. And so, admittedly, if there are people that are concerned with the standard, fair enough, although it is only less than 1% of that standard. So it's very minute in the scheme of what Health Canada allows across every location in Canada for operating these kinds of essential services. Anymore we know that cell phone service isn't discretionary. It's for safety, it's for business, and it's for life.
Yeah, are you going to be making the presentation?
We were told that we don't have a presentation, that the item 10.1 is simply a council discussion. So that's why I'm speaking now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it okay to?
I believe that we have the option to bring you forward during the discussion, if indeed you'll hang in for a few hours till we get there.
No, we just got one in between that.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Hello, Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Staff will be giving the presentation on this, so the questions will be answered, and if they don't have the answers for you, they will ask.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And so, can I have my last 12 seconds?
You may.
Is
indeed.
that okay? Just to the extent that, again, we did make every effort to address aesthetics with what truly is the gold standard for this kind of infrastructure, to really minimize and look at the physics of our frequency as compared to other alternatives. That the solution where it's quite small on the power or the telephone distribution poles is a different kind of coverage. It's a capacity solution as opposed to us building our brand new network and being able to properly serve the community.
And you did exhaust all possible other options in terms of a location.
Correct. It's a network, and so each of the locations has to fit together. So once you anchor some of the locations, then you have less flexibility with what space is left and how best to serve that. And it is true, you do need a willing landlord, and you need the proper topography and location to fully service a coverage area and serve the customer.
Yeah. And in your experience with real estate values, is there a standard? I heard 80% earlier, which I think is unlikely.
Anecdotally, in our experience, and again, we are the proponent, but we don't have data. There isn't data, and Industry Canada does not have that address as a concern. There's not any proof or evidence of that.
Well, thank you. Okay. Any further questions? No?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Margarita Dominguez, honorary speaker.
Thank you.
You may. It's a 2-minute limit, isn't
Yes. Hi, Margarita Dominguez, 2075 Outer Point Road. Is regarding the correspondence about toxoplasmosis. And we cannot get fanatic because if we are talking about bird droppings, there are 60 diseases related to bird droppings. There is presently a plague about the fish that is in all the oceans, which means that in all the 7 years that we have been rescuing cats in Sooke, we only have one case of toxoplasmosis. And there is not very frequent. Depends also how they are treated, but it's only one case that we had, which means it's not such common and such bad as they are saying. That is, please use caution because we are not going to be killing all the animals in the planet because there is one illness. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll get you.
Anna Saunders, 5016, in response to Freedom Mobile. The cell coverage is actually really good. We're much further away from the road and cell towers and sources of the signal. And on our property, there's absolutely no problem with coverage. So I don't understand the problem on the 5154 Sooke Road, which is much closer to the source. Second point I'd like to make is Rogers and TELUS has a very good coverage all throughout. I see no reason why my health should be affected by another company who just wants to make a buck, because that's what it amounts to. And I don't understand how they can say with a straight face that they're very concerned about the citizens. Well, the only concern is that they would pay money for their additional service. So how do you make a decision? What's more important, people's health or somebody's ability to make more money off our backs? 25 people, 25 families say there is no need to improve the signal, we're perfectly fine, and we care about how we live where we live. Thank you very much for your concern.
Okay, one final question. Comment.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tawny Varigan of 409 Granville Street. I'm here as agent to Freedom Mobile. Thank you for having me. I'll be speaking about, obviously, the Freedom Mobile Telecommunications Tower. And I'd just like to readdress some of the concerns raised by the speakers tonight. With regards to the adequate cell coverage in the area, Freedom Mobile, again, is building a brand new network, and this will offer your citizens more choice and more value-priced plans. So it can't be compared to the existing network now because it's a new option. With regards to location, installations are commonly located in residential areas where the people are using the cell service in their homes primarily. And Council recently did approve another cell tower project in a residential area at 2123 Otter Point Road. We feel this setting is really ideal for the new design as it's set back within the trees. And with regards to the property value comment, Industry Canada reports on the national antenna policies state that research does not indicate a correlation between property value and tower location. And with regards to health and safety, this installation is fully compliant with Health Canada's Safety Code 6, which was updated in 2015 to ensure public safety. The results of our Safety Code 6 analysis show that this installation will only be 0.1% of the allowable exposure limit to EMF energy being emitted from the installation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. A quick question, and this regards, I know Industry Canada is now Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, and I understand it has a policy whereby service providers are free to work with each other and share infrastructure. Is that the case?
Yes.
Okay.
Carriers can apply to install equipment on other infrastructure that's existing. However, there's nothing within the area that we are trying to service that will improve will connect the network from the other sites.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So, one final, well, cutting you some slack here. The mayor will have some words. Maybe. Okay, stop asking questions. I've been advised.
My name is Steve Unger at 6698 Helgeson Road. In one of my previous lives, I actually worked as an engineer for two major cell phone manufacturers, and I would just like to give Council a little bit of information. When the testing and when companies say that they're meeting certain limits according to Health Canada, they're looking at their emissions individually or their radiation individually. You also need to consider the aggregate results of all of the radiation coming from all of the different cell phone broadcasters, Wi-Fi, etc. And perhaps the reason why in the center of town Sooke is seeing such a high level is because of all these signals put together. So please take that into consideration when you're hearing all these people coming out with these stats. Thank you for your time.
No, Your Worship, this bylaw is simply coming back for fourth reading.
Moved by Councillor Beddoes, seconded by Councillor McMath. Discussion from the mover?
No,
the seconder? No?
Just from the mover, we've been through this
numerous times now. I think it's time to get on with it. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. How long do businesses have to have before they have to apply for the temporary permit?
There is an existing business that would be required to apply for a temporary use permit by the end of the first week of February.
And so other businesses that are known of, do they have a specified time before they have to apply? I remember previously that on the previous council that it was 6 months was talked around. I was just wondering if anything was in place.
Through your worship, I think what you're thinking of is when we do district-initiated zoning amendments and we give a limited amount of time for applicants to come forward. That's not the case in this scenario.
That's not what I was thinking of. I was thinking of the temporary permits that we're doing for the zoning for the gateway. We had talked about having a set time for people to apply. So it would be just for the one property at this time?
That is correct.
So we'll put this to the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That's Councillor Parkinson and Councillor St. Pierre opposed. So I believe that does pass. So we've had final reading. And we move on to the next stage of this chapter. Okay, so reports requiring action. We're now moving on to 5154 Sooke Road, Freedom Mobile Telecommunication Tower. Staff report from Mr. Diebler. It's Diebler. I think I got it wrong twice.
Staff are wanting the council to proceed into committee of the whole for this process in accordance to their policy.
Telecommunications antenna policy 11.4, which is an attachment in the agenda, speaks to the breaking into committee of the whole or being a committee of the whole decision. The actual recommendation would therefore have to be changed to committee of the whole recommends to council.
So I'll move that we move into committee of the whole at this point. Can I have a seconder on that? Sure. Councillor Beddoes, all approved? Okay.
All right. So Cypress Land Services, on behalf of Freedom Mobile, has submitted an information package to locate a 45-meter tall mono pine tower at 5154 Sooke Road. Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, or ISED, is the final approval authority for all telecommunications towers, but proponents must consult with the local land use authority and the public. Local governments, the ultimate goal of local governments is to issue a letter of concurrence or non-concurrence to the proponent and ISED, which they will then consider as part of the decision-making process. So just to be clear about what the intention of this is. So as you've heard, Freedom Mobile previously proposed a tower at this location in 2017. There was significant opposition raised by neighbors at that time. Council directed the applicants to address these concerns in a report, which the applicant or the proponent prepared. Ultimately, Council did issue a letter of non-concurrence in 2017. As I was referring to, we have policy 11.4, the attachment there, which speaks to the process. ISED has developed the radio communication and broadcasting antenna procedures to guide the consultation process with local land use authorities. That's their process. We have a policy 11.4. In particular, I would just draw your attentions to these sections. In terms of the site itself, the location is about 4.6 hectares in size, located at the eastern boundary of the district near the intersection of Sooke Road and Glints Lake Road. There are currently 3 dwellings on the property. The official community plan designation is rural community residential. It's currently zoned RU2, which is a zone for varied rural uses on large tracts of land within the district. Surrounding uses are RU2 rural with some RU4 rural residential. Now, the zoning bylaw does address telecommunications towers in sections 3.12 and sections 3.19, which are attached to the report. Section 3.12 states that there are no height restrictions for antennas so long as the structure occupies less than 5% of the lot. Section 3.19 states that telecommunications towers are exempt from setback requirements as long as visibility from the highway is unobstructed. As well, it's worth mentioning that there is a section 4.9 of the OCP does deal with communications towers, and that it recommends that providing wireless internet and communication services to the community is a priority. The proposal itself is for a 45-meter tall tower. The mono pine, as it's called, looks like a tree as a way of blending in with the surrounding stand of trees. I'm told by the proponent that this would be only the second such tower in British Columbia that they're aware of if it were to go forward. It would contain 8 antennas and 3 microwave antennas placed amid the branches. Equipment would be located at the base to be enclosed by a fence, and as the proponent has mentioned, it's the purpose is to expand and to launch their network in the Greater Victoria area and to provide a continuous access coverage from east to west along Sooke Road. So the recommendation should be that Committee of the Whole recommend to Council that a letter of concurrence or non-concurrence be issued to Freedom Mobile and Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada for the proposed telecommunications tower at 5154 Sooke Road. And as you're aware, the proponent is in attendance to speak to any questions related to the proposal.
Okay. Thank you, Planner number 1. Planner 1, Mr. Diebler. So here we go. This is the latest in a series of such hearings here in Sooke, and indeed there have been a couple of 4-3 votes on this matter in the past, and now we get to see how this council treats this particular issue. So, Councillor St. Pierre.
Well, the numbers don't add up, so we won't have 4-3 today. That's good.
That's true.
Not 4-3. I was looking at this in terms of a decision-making format that I've mentioned, I think, at least once before, used actually by women giving birth. It's called BRAIN. It looks at the benefits, the risks, the alternatives, what your instincts are telling you, and what nothing would, and deciding to do nothing. The reason I decided to go to this kind of a decision-making model is that although we've talked a lot about property values and sight lines and so on and so forth, I think that if there were no health risks, people wouldn't care. This thing would go in. Honestly, I think the monopine is awesome looking, and with Christmas lights, it'd be great. So, come on, seriously. That'd be awesome. It's got power, too. I mean, you could just light it up. So I think this is really about health risks, and so looking at a model that actually considers health risks, I think, is important. So what are the benefits? Well, the benefits, we could have better prices on plans, but we already have cell coverage. Freedom Mobility will have a better coverage, and will have a chance to make more profits and expand its market. But that's not strictly a benefit to Sooke or to the residents in Sooke. From what I can tell, there wouldn't be any additional jobs in Sooke from this. It would go up, but that would be it. So the benefits are actually minimal. What are the risks? Well, we have risks. We don't know what they are. In aggregate, depending on how many cell towers we have, every additional cell tower, potentially means more radiation, more RF. There's no real significant good reason to have more of it if we already have coverage. At least that's... But there is a risk. We don't know what it is. It's an unknown risk. Now, in Europe, they decided against non-GMO, and they decided to have greater restrictions just so they could actually protect their health from unknown risks. Every technology that comes down the line generally has side effects. We don't often know what they are until decades later, especially for things like teratogenic effects, DNA damage, and so on and so forth. We just don't know. So being careful makes a certain amount of sense. What are the alternatives? Well, we mentioned lower wattage on smaller poles. We could just skip it entirely, and we still have service. Instinct. Well, that's for anyone else to decide. But you can just decide for yourself what your instincts are telling you. And what would happen if nothing goes in? Probably nothing particularly bad. So anyway, just some thoughts. I still do really like the monopine, though. That's a great thing.
Councillor Beddoes.
Yeah, to staff or to mobile people. It mentions that there's going to be 3 microwave dishes. That's what it says on the application on page 54. Tower 45 meters high, 8 flush-mounted antennas, and 3 microwave dishes. Is that correct? How big is a microwave dish?
I would defer to the proponent if the proponent is allowed to speak to that particular comment.
If you'd like to come to the mic.
So the design is for 3 microwave dishes as well as the radio frequency antennas. Sorry, I apologize. So yes, the proposal includes a design for 3 microwave dishes and the radio frequency antennas. Those dishes are to connect the network, so they look to the other adjacent sites.
How big are they?
2 meters, so 1.5
6
feet.
2 meters?
Sorry, 2 feet, 1.2 meters. Apologies, that was my misspeaking.
And they're line of sight, so they can't be obstructed by any branches. Is that correct?
Correct. And microwave different than the radio frequency antennas. The microwaves are point to point, so they look straight. So it's quite a narrow bit of radio frequency, and then the radio.
I'm not worried about. I'm worried about how it looks, not about the
right.
power.
So it would be within the branches.
I know they would be a little less intrusive than the cell phone ones. So, okay, so approximately 2 feet. Okay, how thick is the tower?
So I don't know the exact specific dimensions because we would progress that detail of the construction drawings upon your concurrence.
Okay.
But yes, it's not trivial because that's a significant amount of weight and wind loading at 45 meters.
Okay. I went out to the site myself to have a look, and I actually bugged Mr. Saunders because he had sent a letter, so I stood on his deck. And it looked to me like he's at 208 meters away. It looks like it'd be very intrusive to his view. Have you consulted with his unhappiness with how it will look, even though it's a fake tree? It doesn't matter what you call it, I guess. I have some concerns about this citizens' problems with how it looks. So.
Yeah, no, and we appreciate that. And Mr. Saunders was kind enough to invite me into his living room as well, like was mentioned, and we did the view with the drone. So as best we could to fly the drone to the height of the structure and then move it over behind the larger tree that was between the window and the location. So again...
How many meters above the tree line is the tower going to stand?
It was roughly equal to the largest tree to the left. So that's why when we had the drone exercise, we moved the drone over to see exactly where it was. It's roughly that sort of a larger tree to the left. And the picture that was in the council packet didn't parallel to our experience in the field with the drone. The location is quite a bit further left than in the center of Mr. Saunders' window.
Excuse me.
Yeah, okay. I've heard a number of people mention, and I did a little research myself online, that in Europe they're contemplating going to a 500-meter distance to cell phone towers. Are you aware of that?
No, I am not.
Okay. Yeah, it was, I didn't have any trouble finding it on the internet. Now, I mean, I also found about 87 different studies, some pro, some against, quite a bit against. And what I took away from that is that because it is relatively new in a space of time, sort of the final report on how cell phones affect people is still out.
And it has been, like, our competitors have been in business for almost 30 years, 20 to 30 years.
That.
So there is that amount of history, and that's why Industry Canada, now Industry Innovation, Science and Economic Development, did update their policy in 2015.
Is that the Section 6?
Safety Code 6, exactly,
6,
the health and safety. And they committed to reviewing that regularly going forward every few years.
On the impression it was under review again, is that correct? Or is it just a constant review?
I think it's a constant review, but they do, at 2015 that was fairly recent, and then I don't know of a specific date for the review, but, certainly their job is to try to protect Canadians. And so they're always working on that initiative.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, your worship, Mr. Chair, I would just like to let council know as well that when we vote on issues for the mobile towers, where it says concurrence and non-concurrence, we could say non-concurrence or we could say concurrence. It's still up to the federal government, so we could go with non-concurrence and the federal government could say it could be there, just so that council is aware of that fact. Thank you.
Yeah, I did some research as well, and so Industry, Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada, their valid reasons for refusal of a tower will relate largely to aesthetics and property values. The federal agency no longer considers health concerns surrounding radio frequency emissions a sufficient reason for refusal, which, as this is Health Canada, and so the key point Councillor Parkinson raised is that we can send forward a concurrence or non-concurrence. Now, I believe that, like the Agricultural Land Commission, let's call them Industry Canada because it's easier, they are very keen to see that citizen input and local government recommendations are adhered to. So when no community approval is forthcoming, the applicant is encouraged to try again. So I guess this decision in July 2017 for non-concurrence, I don't know. I guess Industry Canada did not overrule that decision by the District of Sooke, or that recommendation. So I don't know how they'll play this one. However, I'll be voting for non-concurrence on a number of grounds. I did find a report, Ottawa's report on the National Antenna Policy Review, and this was modified in August 2012, does relate to real estate impacts. So they looked at 16 residential properties in Colwood. This was back in 2001. Their BC assessments dropped by an average of 8%, approximately $10,000 each, due to the aesthetic impacts of a broadcasting antenna tower installation. So on that grounds alone, and given that 25 residents, not all of you, because I have heard from a couple who did not sign your survey or your petition, and with TELUS as a server, and they have no dropouts. My wife and I drove along the Sooke Road on Saturday, and we did have dropouts right at Connie Road. We're on Virgin, and I don't know who is the service provider for Virgin Mobile, but there was that brief dropout, and such is the price for living in paradise, I guess, the occasional dropout. So those are my comments. Anyone else? Councillor Beddoes.
Ready to make a motion if it's acceptable.
I'd like to make a motion that we offer a letter of non-concurrence, and the reasons for is, one, it will affect the property values of the citizens adjacent to the site, Two is, I think it certainly spoils the lifestyle of a resident that I witnessed, and others too, of why they moved to a very rural property. Boy, it is really rural up there. So that and the health issues, I do have health issues with 208 meters. I'd be much happier if it was 500 meters. But those three reasons are the reasons I would vote for non-concurrence.
Okay. Do we have someone seconding that? Councillor St. Pierre has seconded. And we'll move to a vote on this at this point, I think. And the resolution, the motion on the floor, if Ms. Temple is complete, reads as follows: that the Committee of the Whole recommend that Council issue a letter of non-concurrence to Freedom Mobile and Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada for the proposed telecommunications tower at 5154 Sooke Road. So, okay.
Through you,
Parkinson.
Mr. Chair, this is, we're in Committee of the Whole, so we don't need a
that's
second,
right.
and we have to send it off to the regular council meeting.
Okay. So at this point, we've had the motion. Do we need to vote on that motion before moving it forward to council?
Yes, you do.
So let's have a vote. All in favor? So that's a 5-5 in favor of moving it forward to council. So at this point, do we move out of Committee of the Whole? So I need a motion to move out of Committee of the Whole by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor... We don't need a... No, we don't. The learning curve. Okay. So we're back in regular council setting. Over to our corporate officer.
So you can make a motion without, just as it actually reads in your agenda packages, which is that council recommend that a letter of non-concurrence be issued to Freedom Mobile Innovation, blah, blah, blah.
Okay. So on that note, can we have a motion? I'm going to move that. The council recommend that a letter of non-concurrence be issued to Freedom Mobile and Innovation Science and Economic Development Canada for the proposed telecommunications tower at 5154 Sooke Road. Can I have a second on that? Sure. Councillor McBath. And all approved, with the exception of Councillor St. Pierre, who has absented himself from the room. So that's passed. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and we'll take a recess now for 5 minutes. Thank you.
I got to have a recess.
Okay, we'll reconvene the meeting now. I don't bang tonight. Okay, nay. That'll be your signature. Okay, we're now moving on to item 10.2, Development Variance Permit for 7214 Austin's Place. And over to Miss Evertsy.
That was a nice try. It's Thank you, Your Worship. It's Miss Everts. We're here for a development variance permit for 7214 Austin's Place. 7214 Austin's Place is within the Whip and Spit neighborhood near Sooke Bluffs Park. So if you're going down Whip and Spit Road, you take a right onto Deer Leap into that area there. The applicant is requesting a variance to the side lot line setback requirement for accessory buildings in the rural residential RU4 zone. The required side lot line setback is 3 meters. The applicant is requesting a setback of 1.5 meters. As you can see on the inset picture on the right, a corner of the building is encroaching on the setback. This allows for a more practical alignment with the existing driveway. This photo indicates the proposed front of the garage, the orange line that's there with the arrow pointing to it. The photo on the left here shows the proposed front of the garage location from the side. The proposed photo on the right has a trailer parked on its right-hand side, and the proposed location of which is the proposed location of the garage for a context purpose. Any questions?
Councillor St. Pierre.
Through your worship to the staff. I'm just curious, why the need for variance at all? Based on the photos and the site map, it looked as though they could basically move their structure forward 1.5 meters and then not bother at all. What's the...
Through your worship to Councillor St. Pierre, it's because of the panhandle and the driveway, so they would like to have the garage sited this way to allow to use the garage the best, so to have vehicles enter and exit properly, because the panhandle comes and has that curb. If they aren't granted this variance, they could redesign and turn it, and then they would just go through a building permit process.
Any other questions? Councillor Beddoes.
Anybody in the neighborhood object to the variance?
Yes, 2 of the neighbors have written in objecting the variance. So the neighbor right next door didn't want such a substantial encroachment on the setback. And the neighbor on the opposite side of the panhandle that looks over this property didn't like that it was within their view. So I have, what's going on? I received this photo from that neighbor. They stated that the garage would be somewhere in the middle of this. I would like to note that the garage is well within the allowed height for the zone, and it's simply that one corner that is encroaching on the side lot line for the siting purposes.
Yes, I see in our package we have a note here from the neighbor Larry Gouge and his wife, and they're in Ontario at the moment, and they've asked us to defer this discussion until they're back in town. And I feel it won't be a public hearing, of course, but it will give them an opportunity to speak to us. And I'm thinking that might be a good idea. St. Pierre.
Based on the fact that the proponents can actually simply make some adjustments to their design and still have an equivalent structure, still running sight lines theoretically, still having more or less the same impacts, I don't know that it would really change, at least my position, or the likelihood of those impacts. I suspect the proponents are going to want to build a garage anyway. It's still going to be about the same height, about the same size. It might be turned a little bit, possibly to something less useful, but I don't know. We could wait, but I don't know that we need to, at least for me.
So your recommendation would be to?
My recommendation would be to move for the variance. No, sorry. Let me bring that back, sorry. Dang, maybe the paper is better. All right. that council authorize the issuance of a development variance permit PLN 01416 to reduce the side lot line setback in the rural residential RU4 zone S 104.7 in bylaw number 600 Sooke zoning bylaw, 213 from 3 meters to 1.5 meters for an accessory building at 7214 Austin Place.
So do we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that motion.
Councillor Beddoes. And
It's right up there on the board. Sorry.
okay, I'll reread that then.
Okay.
That council authorize the issuance of development variance permit PLN 01416 to reduce the side lot line setback in the rural residential RU4 zone S.104.7 in bylaw number 600 Sooke zoning bylaw 2013 from 3 meters to 1.5 meters for an accessory building at 7214 Austin's Place. So effective. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I am not positive, but I think that person in the audience would like to speak to this issue and might not have realized that they should have spoken during the comment period. I was wondering if we could ask them to listen to what they had to say about this. I have no idea what it's for.
We have a motion and a seconder on the floor. Is that the correct procedure, please?
To the Deputy Corporate Officer. Or the acting corporate officer, I should say.
I just wanted to be clear that, Councillor St. Pierre, you want to recommend the variance come forward. It was unclear, okay, in what you were saying, so just to double confirm.
I think, Your Worship, if council decides to hear from someone, a motion is in order. That would require, I think, the withdrawal of the motion that's on the table and a motion to bring someone forward to speak, after which point the motion could be made again.
Well, I'd like to move that we withdraw this, and we can reissue it shortly. Councillor St. Pierre.
I will withdraw my motion.
Okay. I can't withdraw someone else's motion.
I'll withdraw my second.
I will move that we allow the lady in the audience here to come forward and speak to us. Ms. Lister.
I am Jean Lister, and I'm speaking for myself and my sister Gail Powell, who is blind, so she can't see anything that's going on. We live next door. We're at 7212, and our house was specifically designed to have a view from the kitchen and the dining area straight down the 3-foot setback, the 3 meter, to the ocean. And now he is going to build his garage, which will cut into and cut it off, our view completely. And he said to us, sorry. So we would like to see that denied, the 1.5 denied, because it will destroy our view. We will lose it completely, and that's the only view from that part of the house. So all we will see is the garage right up in front of our faces. It will be looming there. Yeah. And he already has a double garage. He is a carpenter and a construction person, and we know that there are going to be very warm saws working in there. And the noise level will probably be of some interest to us. So we purchased this property with that view included, and we feel that without it, the potential future value of our property will be diminished. With the propensity of time we spend in this area of the house, we feel we will lose this value. To lose this valued feature will impinge on our current and future well-being, as this is the principal view out of the kitchen and dining room windows. And that certainly, the current view certainly beats the view of a garage. And they've done studies in the city of Victoria that have proven that in the development of condos, the area in which you spend most of the time in this condo is in the area of the kitchen and the dining areas. So that speaks to our position. Thank you.
Ms. Lidster. Yeah. So, it strikes me, Councillor St. Pierre, that you suggested that given it's 1.5 meters, that perhaps we could, he has the right to build his garage on his property, and yet we could say, well, you'll have to figure out a way to do this without impinging on your 3-meter setback. Councillor Beddoes.
To staff, is there something ingrained like this wider spans, 3 meters? Is there any sort of covenant to say that the property owners use that for the view? I mean, if the person wants to plant trees there, would he not be allowed to plant them there?
Through your worship, to Councillor Beddoes, there's no covenant in place on this property, so this is the 3-meter required setback in that zone. So yes, you could plant trees in that 3 meters,
it is
landscaping.
His property to do, as long as he.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. So if we didn't give the 3 meters and it was left at the 1.5, would there still be a view there? Because they're entitled to do that, correct?
Through your worship, to Councillor Parkinson, so it's a 1.5 meter encroachment on the 3-meter setback. We're not giving a 3-meter variance. Right. It would be a 1.5 meter variance. Yeah. As you can see from the inset here, it's that one corner of the garage for the siding that actually encroaches in on the setback. Mm-hmm. The rest of the building is well outside of the 3-meter line.
I was just wondering if that wasn't there, would they have their view of the ocean sort of thing, or not? I guess it's going to make a difference.
As I said earlier, if the building can't be sited with the encroachment, it could turn and be within the setback, and he is within his height requirements and then would be within his setback requirements and could go to a building permit.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing we can do with that, so, okay, thank you. Make him turn the building.
Further comments? Councillor St. Pierre and McMahon.
My agreeing to the variance was based on the idea that views would be ruined no matter what, that the building would be in the way no matter what. This new information does change things. If we've got a skilled carpenter here, I'm sure that they can make adjustments to their building in order to avoid encroaching on the setback, I would think. They're still going to move forward with the building, but I think that it's not incumbent on us necessarily to reduce the beauty of the neighborhood.
Is that a motion?
Well, we'll get Councillor McMath has a comment or a question.
It was really just a comment. So their space to build the garage, they just have to redesign. So I personally would not want to give that 1.5 meters. And I'd like to make a motion that we don't issue a development variance permit.
Seconded by Councillor.
Information makes a big difference. Thanks very much.
Okay. Okay. So are we, any discussion on that?
Dawn has something to say.
Our interim CAO, Don Schaefer.
I'm I would not like council to put forward a negative motion that does not result in a firm decision, but I'm not just reading this. It appears that if the issuance of the development variance permit is not authorized, then the issue is finished. It's kind of a tricky situation where you put forward a motion that doesn't actually do anything. And I've seen it happen before, and it causes no end of trouble down the road, but I think this one is fairly clear, so just forgive me. Sorry.
Just checking. That's good.
So Councillor McMath has moved the resolution on the screen, the motion on the screen.
Do you want me to read the whole thing
you do that.
That council not authorize the issuance of development variance permit PLN 01416 to reduce the side lot line setback in the rural residential RU4 zone as .104.7 in bylaw number 600 Sooke zoning bylaw 2013 from 3 meters to 1.5 meters for an accessory building at 7214 Austin's Place.
Okay, that's been seconded by Councillor Beddoes, and we'll have a vote now. All approved? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And we're moving on to 10.3, and that is the Greater Victoria Green Team Program proposal. Do we have a report, or we've got all the info here?
Yeah, I think all the information is in the report. If you have any questions, I can answer on behalf of Laura and myself.
Okay.
It always looks your way, it won't be me anyways.
Okay, Councillor St. Pierre.
Oh,
I'm sorry. Oh,
up his hand.
I haven't been watching. But you wait for your right. Okay,
yeah.
good. You got it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
I'd like to move the recommendation.
Do we have a seconder on that motion? Councillor Beddoes, okay.
Point of discussion.
Point of discussion.
It'll be quick. We had an orientation recently by our Parks Department, and they seem to be really good at leveraging their assets to get a lot done. I was wondering if there might be an opportunity for some training of volunteers, maybe a core of volunteers through this Green Team thing to work with parks, or is that just a no-go? So maybe just a question for Ms. Laura Hooper at some point. I don't know how to do that particular piece of it at this point in time.
The corporate officer.
The chair to Councillor St. Pierre. The only thought that I would have on that is the fact that the employees that work for the district are part of a union. Mm-hmm. So that would be the only sort of
point of contention.
Point of contention, exactly. But we definitely enjoy having volunteers come in and that are trained volunteers, and the ones here through the Greater Victoria Green Team are volunteers that have been trained to do this kind of work. So that's why Ms. Hooper is actually quite pleased that they've come forward.
When I originally wrote this, I was looking for opportunities for training Sooke volunteers that might be just work in coordination with the district and taking on any work that can't be addressed by our staff. So doing additional work that wouldn't be addressed by our paid staff, specifically to avoid that issue.
Right. There is lots of actually different types of organizations in Sooke. We have a great volunteerism around this community, and there are other groups that do partake with doing some cleanup environmental work. Girl Guides did one last year, actually, down by the Iam Creek, and Wanda Fuca as Trails also does a lot of work around the community as well.
Okay.
Councillor Parkinson.
Thanks.
Okay. So Amanda Evans from the Green Team was here about a year ago, exactly, and she came that night to propose a collaborative agreement, as the organization has in many of the municipalities, for this $2,000 cost to host these events. The other half comes from the Gosling Foundation. So the Sooke councillors back then agreed with the value of the program, and we put it on hold with the promise that we'd look at it again. So here we are tonight with what looks like a unanimous vote in favor. So we'll call that motion. All in favor?
All in favor?
Yep. Okay. So that's agreed. And I think they've been working on Ed McGregor Park, removing ivy has been one of the targets, and Am Creek as well. Now that they've battled the broom on Whiff and Spit, apparently with the help of the Wanda Fuca Community Trail Society. Okay, there, I've done my research notes, and we'll move on to the next item, which is the Cam Sullivan Memorial Plaque. And the motion, yes, Councillor
Move the
McMahon.
recommendation.
Yes.
I would like to move the recommendation,
Yes.
and I'll second it.
Yeah, okay, I'll second that. All approved? Well, yeah. 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 Well, it was yeah. It's one of those community losses, eh? Back in mid-December, and 190 people in the community have raised more than $20,000 for for his wife Katie and daughter Vivian, and it's described as kind, spontaneous, brilliant, and funny. This Cam Sullivan. So, yeah. So, wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, good move. Okay. So we're moving on to the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund application, and Chief Mount is here to give us a report.
Good evening, Acting Worship and Council. This report is to have Council look at authorizing staff to provide the overall grant management in order to receive an additional funding stream through UBCM's Preparedness Fund. This one is for the improvements to our Emergency Operations Center and training program. The purchase of supplies and equipment to improve the overall operations of the district's Emergency Operations Center is the goal of this grant application. And the package shows some of the equipment that we're looking at procuring through the grant. This includes information technology equipment as well as some generators and a trailer to support the storage and movement of equipment. The past council action has been a similar process. We've received $25,000 in approval in December for the Emergency Support Services grant, and are waiting further information whether we are receiving the $25,000 for the evacuation route planning stream. These programs are really meant to improve and enhance the resiliency of many emergency programs across British Columbia. It's to support improvement of our Emergency Operations Center and staff involvement. We've applied for 3 of the total funding streams, and will likely be looking at another funding stream opportunity in 2020 for community wildfire protection. All in all, we're looking at $75,000 to be injected into the emergency program. Due to having a modest budget, this will be a huge benefit. Part of this process really requires our council to support the current proposed activities through a resolution, and this will be granting us the overall grant management. I'll take any questions now.
Okay, any questions? Councillor St. Pierre.
Sure.
Yeah, just a couple of quick ones. Through your worship, to the staff. I noticed that there were a number of other grant applications that come quick on the heels of that one for flood, proposals, so on and so forth. Are we also applying for those?
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, we haven't decided to apply for the flood mitigation ones, and it's mainly due to our current workload. There's quite a bit of effort that goes into applying for these grant applications, so we prioritize the top 3. And the next one that's in our crosshairs would be for wildfire preparedness for next year.
Okay. And the next thing was simply, given that you might have some old, not particularly great equipment, but a need for maybe having some kind of coordination center or gathering point on the other side of the bridge, would it be possible to make use of some of the equipment that way?
Through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, that's the goal of having other trailers in these grant opportunities. Is ideally meant to locate equipment on the other side of the bridge in case we have some sort of incident. Part of the ESS funding grant that we've been awarded with, we're already looking at a trailer for that reception center type equipment, so we can set up at another location if need be. Some of the retiring equipment in the IT side, I don't see it having any real use and that's why we're looking at procuring new equipment that's modern, effective, and easy to update.
Thank you.
Councillor McMath?
I'd like to move the motion. Should I read it?
Why don't you read it?
That council endorse the funding application to UBCM's Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, Emergency Operations Center and Training Stream for $25,000 to support the District of Sooke's Emergency Operations Center Training, Supplies and Equipment Upgrades Project, and that council authorize staff to provide overall grant management in order to receive this funding.
Can I have a second for that? Yeah. Councillor Beddoes? Oh, sorry. Friend. Missed you again. Oh, tug of war. Okay, all approved? Yes. Well done, Chief. Yeah. Okay. 10.6 is council remuneration options. So, here we are again, down below the poverty line, struggling away here without any federal pensions and poor, pitiful us. And yet, how do we begin this process? We have the options on the table. Staff report, I'll just reiterate. No, you're not just yet. It's gone to my head. Okay, Brenda, carry on.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I would like to make a motion. We have had a lot of discussion on this topic over the last year and a bit, and I would like to move that we form a remuneration committee. And I know you guys don't want to, but I think it's a very good idea, and it's good for us, for the public, to have their say into what happens. And I would like to see a committee that's formed, and it's only for 1 month. The committee has their structure already out for them, so they know what they would have to do, and they would only have to come for the final paperwork to have the bylaw if it has to be amended or anything like that. And I basically gave my discussion with that motion.
I'll second that motion.
We're looking at option 2.
Option 2 with the 1 month.
With a 1 month period. Okay. So that's moved by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Beddoes. Discussion.
So we had the woman come forward, Ms. Lemieux, and they have everything in place in what we need to go forward with this. And I do believe that we need a fact-based report that resonates with the people of Sooke so that we know what they would like too. So it will give us an idea, and I think that's the way we should be moving forward.
Councillor Beddoes, do you have a comment as a seconder? Oh. Well, as protocol states, the seconder of a motion does get the next opportunity to speak.
No, I concur with Councillor Parkinson. I think, I'm also ready to move independently, but I think to be seen in the public to consult with them on this matter might save us some headaches down the road. I understand it's a bit more work for staff, but considering the work that we as councillors put in, I don't have a problem. I'm sorry to use a bit of staff's time that we get this right, because it is a touchy issue. So I concur with Ms. Parkinson's.
Councillor McMath? Future Councillor Patty Rear.
Chair Bateman and Council, I just wanted to reiterate just a part of the report. It's on the second page, actually, in the first paragraph, that if option 2 is selected, the process of advertising, selection of members, planning and attending meetings, etc., for taking on a committee will actually probably go longer than the 2 to 3 month estimated. And if we want to combine that into 1 month, I'm afraid that would be a little bit ambitious.
Councillor Parkinson.
So I will make that 2 months. So there.
I will change my second for 2 months, too.
So, Councillor McMath is up.
Why did the previous remuneration committee, why wasn't their conclusion executed?
Unfortunately, I won't be able to answer that question because I wasn't part of the municipality at that time, but perhaps Brenda Parkinson can.
I'll quickly answer that because in 2011, the Mayor Milne's council, one of their first acts was to freeze the consumer price index automatic raises. So the council salary has been frozen at 2011 rate, Mayor and council. Now, Parkinson has some other insights.
I was on council at the time, so it was approved in 2008 for the incoming council, and then that council decided not to move forward with what was given as the increases for each year adding up. So in 2011, they gave the index 1 year, and then it was frozen. So there was a consumer index for 1 year only during the last 11 years.
And how was the previous remuneration committee selected?
We have a policy in place through the District of Sooke for all our committees. The application, like Ms. Rio said, it will go out and ask for people to sit onto this committee. Then it comes back forward and they are reviewed, and then we can determine whether there's 3 or 5 people that I think 3 people for the committee.
So I just have concerns because I am not retired and I have to maintain a job full time, and to attract, besides the term that I'm on now going forward for Sooke, to attract an even spectrum of the community, you have to have an attractive compensation to justify the time you put in. And with me writing down the hours that I put into this job that I do love, it really essentially comes down to, like, on average $6 to $7 an hour for me. So it's a huge, like, personal sacrifice, but I knew that going into that, and I welcome that. But going forward for other people, for the district, even if I'm no longer on council, I would want to attract a spectrum of council candidates that didn't just reflect a certain section.
Councillor Parkinson, and then St. Pierre.
So with the council remuneration and moving forward, we all come in, we know what we're getting, so that's fair enough. Normally the previous council in the last year of their term would have set what the amount would be for the incoming council. So with this committee, we would hope that for the next election, that will already be in place for the incoming council. And when you look at who's on council, you do have 4 members that I know of that have university degrees. There are people who are educated who are sitting around the table making informed decisions. And I think that we have a very good council here right now, and I'm very pleased to sit with all of you.
Councillor St. Pierre and then McMath.
I think I tend to agree with the direction of Councillor McMath's dialogue, I guess. One of the things that I looked at was the presentation by the EDG group, and then the option number 1. Even the 15% increase would bring compensation up to $11,500, which is still significantly lower than the average of the municipalities that were proposed by the EDG as being comparable to Sooke. When you took the average of those, just add them up, divide them by 4, it was $15,531. And so, honestly, option number 1 doesn't seem actually particularly reasonable either. I wouldn't want to go for option 1. I wouldn't want to go for option 2 because I think it wastes time. And again, we should be getting on with real business. I think there's an agreement that council remuneration at this point is extremely low. Everyone has a chance to speak, at least for 2 minutes, and I didn't hear a single person speak about council remuneration and say, well, actually, no, there was the one person who said, let's follow along with the previous process. But there was no one that said this is an appropriate pay scale or anything like that. There was a general agreement that things need to be remedied. Even at 15,000, if we went to 15,000 and just said, this is what we're doing, we're going for 15,000, this would still be below the average. we would still be below the average. I would actually move, except that we have a motion, and I can't, for something a little different.
Councillor McMahon.
Also, I wanted to touch on that we've lost our tax exemption as well. So we're incredibly low for remuneration to start with, and then now we've gone down about 12.5% on top of that. So yeah, the 15 increase, that just sort of recovers from the tax exemption. So people touch on, saying transparency, and I feel like we're incredibly transparent right now in this conversation, this dialogue. Like, there's a serious lack. Like, we haven't had an increase in, 10 years? Like, it's very clear that we need an increase. And so 15% to cover the exemption, and then I would put another 15 on top of that. And then we could form a committee to talk about the continued annual adjustment of what that remuneration looks like. Absolutely. But we've spent a ton of time, and you've already had a committee, and we're 10 years behind. So I would like to move a little faster.
Councillor Beddoes.
Well, I certainly concur with everything that's said. I understand that when we lost our tax exempt to 1/3, we've actually lost 15%. But with that being said, I don't think delaying it 2 months is going to be a great hardship on us. I understand, and I think that when it comes back to us, they'll make a recommendation, and then we will add. If we're not happy with that recommendation, we can go back right to what you said. And all we're doing now is giving a 2-month period for the public to have a little bit more of a say, and then it comes back to us for a vote anyways. And I understand that it involves a bit more staff, but I think not only do we have to be transparent, we have to be seen to be transparent, and I understand that there's not a great deal of problems with the council as it sits now. But I think it's the right way to go. In 2 months, I'm sorry with Councillor Macbeth. I understand that she works. I'm retired, so it doesn't matter to me about losing the time. But I think 2 months is not an unreasonable amount of time to wait, and then we get the public's view on it, and then we vote.
Okay, I'm going to say a few things. It strikes me option 1 and option 2 are both pretty valid. It's possible that we could do option 1 immediately and then strike this committee, as you've suggested, 15%. But by the same token, I'm in agreement with Al that the hands-free operation of this particular process, any committee that is struck would be handed immediately this package of material, including a pretty useful recommended increase over the 4-year term proposition offered by Doug Wittich and the Economic Development Group, and these other studies that show quite clearly that we are way behind the times. And then it would be out of our hands and in the hands of the good citizens of this committee, and we could avoid all that social media castigation that will come if we do say tonight 30% right now. So those are thoughts which are not leading into any particular conclusion. Councillor Parkinson.
Through Mr. Chair, this is my 3rd term on council. So the first time I sat was $8,500. The second time, which just finished, was $10,000. I stayed there for the 4 years, did my work, was on probably more committees than most of my council members put together. I ran again, knowing full well what the wage was, and we sit here 2 months into our term, and we're saying we don't want to hear the public, but we want to increase our wage $5,000. That does not seem right to me, and I think that we should be listening to the public and then making an informed decision after that. And should it be that we don't like what comes back, we can always change it then too. So at least we take the time to listen to what the people have to say that elected us a couple of months ago.
Councillor McMahon.
I think sometimes people, it's a touchy subject because people are concerned that by increasing their salary, it may change people's perspectives on them and affect their standing with the community. I think when you have community members that come forward and have spent their own volunteer time to tell you that you need to pay yourselves more, like, that's an incredible signal to show you just how far behind we are. There's no hidden agenda here. It's very straightforward. And if we're discussing about having a remuneration committee with 3 people on it, this is not an accurate reflection of the community. There's 13,000 people here that aren't reflected in that. So what you're saying is if you put together a small group of people and they bring forward a suggestion that you dislike, we can still decide what we want anyway. So that doesn't show community thought or community care or transparency to me. That just shows you're going through a process because you are self-conscious about what people are going to say on Facebook.
Well, okay. Feisty, that's good. There's a sensitivity to community values, and of course, social media is an echo chamber, and we'll take it broadsided any which way, very likely. I'm going to make a suggestion here that this. I'm just curious, the Consumer Price Index, automatic annual increase or decrease based on the annual rate, was frozen in 2011. If it had not been frozen, where would we stand today? Would that be equivalent almost to the 15% that's recommended in option 1?
No, it actually would be quite below still.
Oh. Okay. Councillor Parkinson. I'm sorry. Oh, dear. Britt is rolling her eyes back there. Councillor St. Pierre.
We were more or less elected to make decisions. I'd like us to make those decisions if we believe they're good ones and stand by them. I don't think that actually, going to a committee, if we feel that it's clear, necessarily makes sense. I don't mind the 2 to 3 months, and I was also well aware that I was looking at a serious wage increase because I'm a farmer, but that's okay, But having said that, castigation, I mean, that's what we're expected. When we make a decision, some people aren't going to like us, some people will. I don't like the idea of wasting taxpayer money on a process where we already know what the outcome should be. We already know what the outcome should be. I think it would be interesting. I don't know why people wouldn't have stood up in the first place if they thought that things were inappropriate or that we shouldn't be voting on this sort of thing. But no one was interested in that. It was cell towers. I think there's maybe an overestimation of how much people would be offended by us actually moving forward. But I don't know. I also think that there's a reason why we have different people on council, and I might be wrong.
Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the audience, who agrees with a $5,000 raise for council? I can't stand.
I'm sorry, you can't do that.
I just did it.
Straw poll. Councillor Beddoes.
I was just I agree with what Councillor St. Pierre says, other than the decisions that we make need to be informed decisions. And I think that if we get some input from the public, I personally can make a better decision. I think if it left to me today, I would go for the blank 10 to 15,000. But I want to wait to see what the public has to say, and I might modify that to 14,000 or 16,000, depend what they come back and say. But I would like to hear from a few more people. I understand the people in this room, certainly understand that the amount of hours you put in, it certainly was a great deal more hours than I anticipated. But again, like everybody else here, I think we're enjoying what we're doing. And but I think 2 months is not a hardship on us. I think we can make an informed decision in 2 months.
Councillor McMath.
So we've had a report brought forward by a member of the public, and we've also had a staff report prepared as well. So the community has an opportunity to come here tonight at the public hearing to debate or to make their points, and they're not here. So that tells me a lot about what they think, that they're not here anti us giving our
Probably because it's not working this way.
to put together a committee for 2 months, like I understand like the timeline is not that long in the scheme of things because we already waited 10 years, so what's 2 more months? But for me, it seems redundant if they bring forward a suggestion, a recommendation, and it's a committee formed from such a small selection of the town itself, and we still can go forward with our own decision, then what, I challenge you, like what is the point of wasting staff time to put together a committee just for the sake of a perceived transparency? That is, in reality, that's not what it is at all.
I'm thinking I'd like to bring a motion forward, and that would... We have
There's
a motion on the floor.
Yes, there is.
I see. Okay. Councillor St. Pierre.
Maybe we should move towards a vote on the motion.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to speak one more time. Through you, Mr. Chair. You form a committee, you can put as many people as you want on the committee. The number was just stated. The previous committee had 5 people on it. They chose accountants and they chose business people to sit on the committee. So that's how it was done that time. So I just threw out that number. You can put 3, 5, 7, whatever you would like. I just think that I was just elected 3 months ago, and I just can't go forward and save 5,000 just like that. I just think it's wrong for me.
Okay, I'm going to... one more comment, and then we'll have a vote on this, and if it does not go through, perhaps we can come up with a hybrid motion. Councillor McMahon.
I've already touched on like attracting like a quality spectrum of the community, but I'd also like to point out that to spend $5,000 when we spend 10 times that on a staircase, I think you have to look at like the value of like the time and the quality of the candidate that you're looking to have on board.
Okay, why don't we have a vote on this motion on the floor, that council form a remuneration committee for a period of 2 months to review the issue of council remuneration.
So they all had one more comment. I'd like.
Oh, certainly, Councillor Bettis.
We're all talking about the same thing here. I think we all agree 100%.
Yeah.
The only difference is to have a committee and wait 2 months. I don't think it's a big hardship. I agree with everything you say. I agree about attracting candidates for the next election. All that stuff is valid. So I'm not afraid to go to the public and get their input, and I think we will get the same result. I understand it's a frustration for the staff. They might have to do a bit of work, but I don't mean that derogatory staff. I appreciate all you do. But I think it's a little bit more than optics. I like to think that it's a little consulting back to the community. And I understand there's not a whole lot of people here tonight, nobody in fact, voting against it. And I have a feeling that's the way the committee's, the public's going to go. The Economical Development Group, I was very happy with what they brought forward. So that they have a big influence in the community. So I'm pretty confident that we'll get this completed within the 2 months. So.
Okay. So we will have a vote on this particular motion. All in favor? Opposed? Okay.
I'd like clarification on that. The way I understand your motion is it's 15% for 2019 and that the committee would come back for 2020. I can't support
Well,
it.
The committee would be formed immediately within the next 2 months to review this issue. In this way, do I have a seconder for that motion?
The committee, if I could say, could probably be formed to determine the annual percentage amount.
Okay. Okay.
Once again, I'm not happy with that. I mean, I think with the old method, where they come forward, I think first of all we have to play catch up of where we should be, and then go on for future years. So to come back with a percentage of 5%, 5%, 5% for each of the 4 years or something like that, that's not acceptable to me.
Hey, Councillor McMath.
I disagree with the 15%, because the 15% will just cover the exemption that we've lost. So I would like for it to be changed to a 30% increase. And then I do like the idea of forming the committee to discuss annual renewals and assessments. I'm okay with that. And just to clarify, like they would set like a formula for that. They wouldn't revisit it every single year. It would just be set for the term.
Councillor St. Pierre.
I'd like to suggest that we could either table the motion or I do think that the 15% increase it's not quite right, and it's going to make it difficult to move forward towards something that's actually more appropriate. So I don't think that should necessarily be what we do. I'm curious because I know that in the past we actually hired the council or the district hired a consultant to look over the wage situation, and the report was brought. I believe so. I thought I saw a report that was done by someone.
Central Saanich.
Yeah. We didn't hire anybody.
Okay, but there are professionals out there who actually know about wages and could be an arm's length, and they could do that kind of a job, and that'd be that. I don't know, the committee, it just doesn't seem like No, it's not. No, it's
no crosstalk, please.
We can have committees doing slightly different things, but in this particular case, I'm curious as to whether or not we could just utilize a consultant. Why not?
Councillor Parkinson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, am I allowed to table this?
Through the
I made
chair
the motion.
to Councillor Parkinson. To table a motion would mean that you bring it up later on in the meeting.
Oh,
to
right.
defer a motion would be that it would be gone to a different meeting in the future.
Am I allowed to do that now? Well, there's a motion there.
Was it
defer?
seconded?
I don't believe
It wasn't seconded yet.
Can I defer it then?
No, it has to be seconded. It's not a real motion.
For the issue. Your Worship, it occurs to me that you might defer the issue to a future council meeting, at which time.
Can I do that?
Yes, you may, because the motion right there that's written hasn't been seconded by anyone.
I would like to defer the motion to the next council meeting.
Seconded by Councillor St. Pierre. And we've muddled our way through again on this one, but we're moving closer and closer to a consensus. This will give us some time to think, because as the public well knows, we are not permitted to discuss these things amongst ourselves in quorum settings. That's right. So I think it's likely so have we now formally tabled this? Do we need to vote on that? Yeah. You've seconded. Let's vote. I'll table it. All in favor? Okay. Opposed by Councillor McMath.
And, Your Worship, our internal multimedia seems to have required us to restart, so that's what we're doing right now.
Okay. Take a brief recess here for technical problems, I guess, or can we just carry on? Okay, we'll carry on. Okay. So, official community plan. Oh, well, we're going to drop item 10.7, request for proposals, strategic plan 2019-2022. That was an error that went on the agenda tonight. It's something we'll be discussing in camera and bringing forward a report in due course, a Ryzen report. Moving on to 10.8, the official community plan pre-approval. Is there a
Move recommendation.
Motion to move the recommendation, and second by Councillor Parkinson, seconded by Councillor McMath. And we'll have any comments by the mover and seconder? No? Councillor Councillor St. Pierre.
Okay, given that the OCP review is a fairly lengthy exercise in community participation, community engagement, I've had a thought that we should really be considering spending some of our money on training the trainers, which is to say basically getting the participation of community groups to see which one of them might be willing to learn about facilitation. This would start creating a core of people that could actually be involved in any sort of community engagement process in the future, and also reduce our overall costs in the long term. So if we're actually hiring or putting together a proposal or an RFQ, I would like to see something like that added in if possible. That's it.
And, Your Worship, if it's Council's desire to do that, I mean, we're going to put together a request for proposals, and if Council wishes us to include that, then a resolution to that effect would be appropriate at this time.
Okay.
Well, I must say that's very wise thinking from Councillor St. Pierre. As I said, I think at my first meeting, I was staggered by the amount of money that goes out to consultancy firms. I think that was the baseline affordable housing study. We here in this council chamber back in 2015 or so, I think, for the Community Center Advisory Committee, brought in Mr. St. Pierre as a citizen to lead an open space process that generated a really useful report that was shelved, but nonetheless, it was a remarkably good process done on the cheap, and yet from a very skilled and capable individual. So I don't know how that resolution would look.
I can try and wing something right now.
Or could you bring this forward for another night?
As you wish.
And we'll work with what's on the table here.
Actually, if I may?
Yes, you may.
Question for our CAO. Would it be preferable to have some sort of resolution immediately, or is it...
Your Worship, to Councillor St. Pierre, I think putting together a request for proposals for a document of this scope is going to require us to put in a fair amount of effort over a period of time. So it's certainly possible that we would come back to you and say, does this request for proposals seem to meet Council's desires? And at that time, if there are gaps in it, we would entertain some feedback. We would like to, at a certain point, we'd like to kind of get on with the request for proposals, though, but we do also, it would be my intention to say, here's what we're planning to do. Do you concur with it? And if there was an issue at that point, you might want to put that forward at that time.
So, Councillor Beddoes, do you have a comment?
Yeah, reviewing the OCP is critical to move ahead, and I'd like to get on with it sooner than later, and I'd like to give the staff permission to start the process. So let's get on with it. I mean, we've got all sorts of things hanging in the balance, and it hinges on that OCP. Let's do it right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. At the same time, perhaps during this strategic process, when we're bringing in a highly capable company, the consultancy firm, that they could offer some of their expertise to individuals within the community, I believe is Councillor St. Pierre's idea, that they can train up and learn, an apprentice almost in some way, to become resources that we can rely on in future. But as Councillor Beddoes says, this OCP, looking at some of the, it's a remarkably complex process, and I think we need to bring in the pros for it. Councillor St. Pierre.
I'm not sure what the appropriate procedure would be, but is it permissible for me to have the approval of council to refine this type of a thinking and work with staff on something along those lines? Or is that a resolution in itself?
Your Worship, I think, giving it further thought, I think that this train-the-trainer process is something that could run along a parallel track without necessarily being involved with the official community plan process that could feed into it. It occurs to me that it's building a different set of skills with a different audience who might very well then be able to feed into the official community plan process. But what we'd like to do, of course, is to start working on the RFP, and we can fine-tune it as we go along. I think just simply throwing an RFP on the table and inviting proponents to bid, I think would be, like pulling off the shelf and fire it out there would be short-sighted. I think we need to put forward something that's going to tailor an outcome to Sooke's needs.
Councillor Beddoes with a motion?
I would make a motion that we authorize staff to issue request proposal for the community plan.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Councillor Bateman, second. We'll vote on that? All approved? Yes. Okay. And thank you to staff for being proactive with that recommendation.
And patient.
Yeah. Okay. We have 10.9 is request for sponsorship for the Sooke Car Show, which of course came up at our last council meeting, but perhaps any background? We thought we were receiving a report. Was it in fact a request for sponsorship?
No.
Yeah, there's just a letter that was sent in, and it's included in your agenda package.
Oh, sorry.
To the chair, it is a letter from the Sooke Car Show, and they're inviting us to partner with the Sooke Fall Fair for our annual Sooke Car Show. It is on page, Yep. In the middle of the letter, there are 4 bullets of different sponsoring options. Banner sponsorship of $125 with the logo on our banner. T-shirt sponsorship of $50. Your business name will appear on all T-shirts. Trophy sponsorship of $50. Your name on our unique Sooke Car Show plaque. And swap bag sponsorship of $300. Your logo on each of the swag bags.
I think, like Councillor Beddoes, I did not receive. 192 is the second sheet of the official community plans. It didn't make it.
Yes, it appears to be. It appears to be in the electronic package, not in the paper one.
Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, I would like to make a recommendation that we give a sponsorship for the $300 for the swag bag, and where our logo is on each of the bags. And considering this is our 20th anniversary of incorporation, maybe we can do something along those lines so that everyone is aware that we're in the celebration mode for this year.
Seconded by Councillor McMath. Councillor Parkinson, St. Pierre.
No, I just missed seconding, that's all.
Oh, okay.
He doesn't
All
look
right.
that far down the way.
So all approved on that? Okay.
Thanks.
Fantastic. We now move into correspondence. And anyone want to pull items out?
I'd just like to pull one. It's a Heritage BC. It's on page 205 of 232, and it is to have a proclamation.
I would like to just bring out all the items from the correspondence package. So that was item E, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Yes. So I'd like to bring out item F, the letter from the Sooke RCMP. Councillor St. Pierre?
AHIKQ.
HIJKQ.
Thank you.
Any others?
Just, your chair, just wanted to make you aware and bring your attention to that there was a couple of pieces of correspondence added in the supplemental agenda as well.
Regarding cat licensing, feral cat sanctuaries.
There's not much there.
Should relate to you. And Ann Clements' comment that she is writing to offer my full support for Dave Wittich' outline of proposed pay increases. You deserve a raise. Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. We all agree on that.
Okay, so let's begin then with E.
A.
Oh, did you call A?
I'm just going to jump
Okay.
to E, it's okay, but...
A. Councillor St. Pierre.
Okay, this was the Vancouver Island Transportation Strategy, and I believe it's provincially mandated or some such. I would like us to be able to include prioritizing transportation plans that reduce carbon and encourage...
Mike, no one can hear you.
Oh.
Yours is
Sorry. This was the Vancouver Island Transportation Strategy, and I'd like to see if we can actually request prioritizing transportation plans, especially at the local level for Sooke, that reduce carbon and encourage local economic development. So, some sort of communication with them. That's it. Do we need a motion for staff to communicate with them, or? I'm not a worship. I'm just a. Oh, sorry. Okay. No. I'd like to make a motion that we contact the Vancouver Island Transportation Strategy people and ask that they prioritize plans that reduce carbon and encourage local economic development. Oh, I'm losing it. Local economic development.
Second.
Okay.
Vote.
Okay, yeah.
I'd like a little clarification. I'm not sure what we're doing here again.
Yeah, I'm a little... Because we are talking about we would be contacting the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure regarding the transportation strategy. Well, I just wanted to get that point clear first. Councillor St. Pierre.
Okay, when I was looking at their correspondence, I didn't see anything in particular in terms of their priorities, in terms of, what they were aiming at in their strategic planning or in their planning towards carbon reduction or local economic development. So I'm hoping we can mention that at the beginning so they can put it into their priorities.
So this is just sending him a letter to...
Just letting them know they missed something in terms of what they're shooting for. That's all.
So we've had that moved and seconded by Councillor McMullen. Is that right? Parkinson. So we're discussing that at this point? I'll just... Yeah, the strategy is dealing with future existing multimodal infrastructure projects, potential emergency detour route. And I agree, it's likely lacking aspects that are being covered through the Clean BC program, right? But this is good. This is a statement by Sooke that we care about these matters. I'd also like to follow up on what the North Sooke Community Association, Mr. Bouchard, I believe it was, he was very keen for us to ensure that the Ministry of Transportation was aware of our Transportation Master Plan and that there was some syncing up going on. So I don't know, while doing this, we might also remind them of the existence of our Transportation Master Plan.
They've been invited.
Okay. All right, let's have a vote on this motion. All approved? Okay. Okay, now we're moving on. Okay, item E, this is Heritage Week proclamation request.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would like the mayor to proclaim Heritage Week for February 18th to the 24th.
We actually, we do have a policy in place regarding proclamations, and it is actually up to the mayor's discretion who she decides regarding the proclamations.
I'm the acting mayor, so we're making a motion to declare Heritage Week. You've made this motion. You've had it seconded. I'll second it. All approved? Okay. We're doing well. It's 9:45. This is a record so far. Oh, right. We're going back. You're right. Okay, so we'll move along here. I pulled out the RCMP report, which I find fascinating, and I understand that Staff Sergeant MacArthur will address us in person on I think, a quarterly basis, which is great. So I'm looking forward to that. I was reading his article in the news, the article in the News Mirror talking about pressures, and Al's muttering over there.
No, sorry, I just yawned.
You yawned. Yeah, he's going long again here. Anyway, I look forward to hearing from him in person about the challenges, and I know they're seeking more officers for the district, and certainly issues regarding the current RCMP building and how that might evolve. Okay, what else was pulled? So that's the Recycling Council of BC conference.
The Recycling Council of BC conference happening on May 8th and 8th to 10th.
Where is it?
It's in Whistler. And I would like to go, but I'm not sure. Is this something that needs to be moved or anything like that? Okay. I'd like to move for myself to participate in the Recycling Council of BC conference from May 8th to 10th in Whistler.
Oh, I second that motion. I think you should get educated.
I need it.
You can come back and share it.
We're going to vote on that? Yes. Oh. Councillor Parkinson.
So when we move on council attending different workshops or anything like that, we also require that you bring a report back to council for discussion, so that we're all informed of what has been going on.
Okay.
And one other thing to go with that. So the cost for this conference, where is the funding coming from?
I believe that there is money set aside for councils to attend, or council members to attend conferences, so it would come out of that budget.
Yeah, that would be good to see, so that we could divvy it up in a fashion. Councillor McMath.
Well, if you're moving the motion to have a report on how much it's going to cost for you to go, can we also find out if it could be just emailed, the package or slideshows or things like that can just be sent to us from the conference? So you're asking to have your trip, you want to be sent to this trip and for it to be paid for. So I would just like to know how much it's going to cost and if they can just email you the materials.
Through you, Your Worship.
Councillor Parkinson.
We have funding in our fund for council to attend conferences, workshops, so that you learn and become aware of what's going on. So that is why the money is set aside for individuals to go to different events. And what is required from that is that whoever goes, that they come back and they present to council and give a little dialogue of what they did and what they learned. So it's not the whole package or anything like that. We also do that when we go to AVICC as well, because we will all be probably signing up for different courses while we're there, different classes. So just to keep each other informed.
Councillor McMath.
Through you to staff, do you know how much money is in that?
I'm not sure how much exactly there is, but there is usually quite a large amount in there, yeah.
And during budget discussions...
Beddoes.
I'm not going to Paul River so he can have my stipend.
You're not.
I'm busy.
Okay. Well, you learn something every day. Thank you, Councillor St. Pierre, for... thank you, Councillor St. Pierre, for... stepping up, because I see these things coming through. There seems to be a lot of conferences, a lot of events. This one is for you as the CRD intermunicipal climate change. It's clearly an appropriate place for you to be. I hope you'll also report to Transition Sooke and Zero Waste Sooke about your findings there. And and I like the idea that we'll find out from staff at some point about the size of this budget, and because each of us have fields of expertise which we can tap into. So I'd like to request that be brought forward to the next meeting. Thank you. The acting mayor. The real acting mayor. Well, the question was called. So you're in opposition to that?
Yeah.
Okay. You're permitted to give your reasons.
Just because, no, I think it's a great idea and you should, and I would just prefer that we see the dollar amount come forward before we greenlight trips. Although I understand there is a large bank or budget that we have, but I've never seen it. And I just would like the numbers before I greenlight. That's all.
That's dealt with. Now we're moving on to, I think, I came up, the letter from Island Health.
This was, sorry.
This was an item of correspondence about something called Vision Zero, which is essentially, I think, some sort of traffic calming initiative. And I think that it would be appropriate for someone from the district to find out, given our issues on Route 14 and such. So I don't know that we necessarily need to send council, but would it be possible to find a councillor staff to attend this particular learning opportunity? Let me just check that.
I think the one problem there is it's on February 8th and 9th in Surrey. I guess someone could go.
Yeah, it's a bit tight.
And yet again, without knowledge and access to the size of the budget. And I suspect there will be future events of this kind, possibly. Councillor Parkinson.
Through your worship, staff determines what conferences they're going to go on, and we don't determine it for them. So we can decide if we want to go.
Okay.
J was cited. Vancouver Island Regional Library elimination of fines on children's materials. Bravo to encourage young people and their financially stressed families from not worrying about the lost copy of Dr. Seuss, that piling up endless fines. So yeah, that's good news. Did you cite K, Tony? Yes. Okay.
That was Jerry Godin with regards to asset management, and I was wondering if either Chief Mount or Brian Goebel, I believe, given that they're both heavily involved in that sort of, but especially Brian, might be put in contact. I don't know if he's received this correspondence or if staff is passing on this sort of correspondence.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor St. Pierre, yes, staff has been emailed this information, and we do have currently, I believe, 3 staff that have gone through training already.
Of QRS and T, which are the abandoned boats issue down by the dock. I did check with staff about this earlier today, and the suggestion I received was that either bylaw enforcement or corporate services return to council with a report for options, complete with projected costs on how to deal with this issue. And the issue is that there are boats, abandoned boats, that are tied up to the rotary pier without the buffers, and they're banging up against the pier and causing some damage to public property. So the number of people who live in that area have made note of this and have asked us to take some action. So the suggested action here is, as I've just stated, that sounds really good. I'll move that. Council directs staff to bring forward a report on abandoned boats in the Sooke Basin and Harbour, including options for removal and associated costs. Seconded by Councillor Parkinson. All approved? Okay. All right. And I think that was it. So at this point, we have a few final items. Council and CAO verbal reports. Anyone would like to give us an update? Councillor Parkinson.
So through you, Mr. Chair, we did not talk about our events that we attended or what we were at from the previous council because it went on too long. So it starts off with January 1st with the New Year's levy, the Mayor's New Year's levy, which was said to be the best New Year's levy to date, and it's been going on with 3 mayors, so it's been going on for over 10 years, and being our year of incorporation, it was extremely well done. We had poet Wendy Morton create a poem for the district, and we had great groups like the District of Sooke Lioness, the Harmonies Project, and Janet McTavish perform and present at this event. On Tuesday, January 8th, we had the BC Children's Hospital of Festival of Trees, and they received twice as much money this year as they did in previous years. And what they did, the District of Sooke helped out in, we had trees set up around town in different businesses. So a number of them participated, and so it added more from what was at Sea Park. So it was a huge success with approximately 17 trees this year. So then on Wednesday, January 9th, I did the webinar for the Ministry of Forest Lands and Natural Resources. They talked about the operations, rural development, the overview and interest of what was going on in all of these areas. It's quite interesting. We can just take them at home for this to find out what's going on, and a report will be coming back from them for those that participated in this. On Friday, January 11th, we attended the West Wind Harbor Co-Housing Celebration, and Al and Jeff were there, and that was a great event with the sod turning with the mayor with their gold shovel, taking part in it. On Monday, January 14th, I went out with the Bylaw enforcement officer, Medea Mills, for a ride-along, checking out all the areas of concern in the District of Sooke, watching her write her tickets, warning tickets, and things like that. So it was a great way to see things. On Tuesday, January 15th, Councillor Beddoes, I attended the Sea Park orientation, where we had a tour of the arena, the swimming pool, and all the areas and everything that's going on. You're welcome. on Wednesday, well, I'll let you add to it. Wednesday, January 16th, I had the Regional Water Supply Commission meeting. So it's very interesting going now to the CRD board meetings, and I think for the first meeting there, it's more like listen and learn and see what everybody else is doing. That's where I learned to call you Mr. Chair, because that's what they do there. And then on Thursday, January 17th, we had the Parks field trip, which we all attended, which was a really great day. The CAO came with us, and it was great seeing what are in the works, what's taking place, and where we can improve upon as a district. There were lots of great ideas put out in that regards. Yes, it was super informative. On Thursday, the 17th, right after that meeting, or during that time, I attended the Sea Park Commission meeting with Councillor Beddoes, where he was elected chair. That's why you should go first. Then on Saturday the 19th, I attended the TAC workshop with Councillor Al Beddoes, which was in Colwood, which is it was a really great learning experience. They only have this committee once at the beginning of each term, so it explains all the different First Nations that are involved in the treaty negotiations and where it's going to. So it was really informative, and it was very well done. Then on Wednesday the 23rd, I attended the Film Commission meet and greet with Councillor Bateman. So we were there first thing in the morning, enjoying a nice breakfast, hearing what they have to offer for out here. They're going to be coming to council for the grant review, and looking forward to a lot of movies being created in Sooke. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I went to the Parks and Environment Committee meeting, which was very entertaining. They only talked about the environment there. The mayor was a seconder for the motion on the environment. They had 33 speakers for the public hearing, and probably 10 of them were under the age of 15. And then a number of other people that were there. So it was very interesting to hear what they all had to say, and that motion was approved unanimously. Then on Wednesday the 23rd, after that meeting, I went over and attended the our Arts Commission meeting. which we have just become a member. I wish we had put me in prior because we only did it in term. So we have to wait till next month for it to be finalized by the board. But I think this is going to be a real blessing for Sooke, for the arts. There are so many great art projects and the ideas that they're coming up with to fund arts councils. I did not realize that there's only 4 arts councils in our whole area, and we have to be one of them. So our money that we give to them will be definitely well spent because we will receive it back twofold. And then on Friday, I've decided that once a month I would do the coffee talks, Let's Talk Sooke. And I was in the Stick in the Mud, which turned out to be really well done and was really interesting in that only women spoke to me about all their issues. So the issues were for the crosswalks in the center of town and by the Sooke Legion to be painted. It was about the area, the Gatewood area they talked about. Yeah, it was quite interesting. So there you go. Those are mine.
That's something. You really are dedicated. Thank you, Brett.
You're very
Councillor
welcome.
Parkinson.
You're very
any other
welcome.
reports? Councillor Beddoes.
I just want to know if there's any more time for anybody else at this table. That was quite a long report. Just a couple of quick notes on C-Park. I was elected to chair that committee, and I've already been interviewed by the press twice. My observation is C-Park is very well run. The staff down there is probably one of the happiest staff that I've ever had to deal with, and that tells me that things are working well. So steady as she goes, and I'm looking forward to filling that position. The other thing is that tack with the workshop on Indigenous people and treaties and things like that. What an eye-opener. Absolutely blew me away of what we're in for in the next number of years. But anyways, it was very informative, and I learned a tremendous amount. The first problem was I went to the wrong golf course, but I was kind of surprised when nobody else was there, but fortunately I was there early enough that I could turn around and go from the Gorge Golf Course back to Colwood in time for the meeting. But I guess things like that happen, but yeah, a lot of fun. And I have to comment about the parks too. Talk about an organization that I'm very proud to be part of. Is when we went on that parks tour, every 10 feet or so, one of the employees, our employees, walking through would stoop down and pick up a little piece of garbage. And in the course of 100 yards, they got handfuls of this stuff. And they do it all the time. And I thought, what a wonderful thing if we all did that. This town would be spick and span. As I said, I stepped over a gum wrapper coming in here. But I was very impressed with the people that we have working here and the dedication they had to their job and making do with what little they have. So I was quite impressed, and I'm very proud that they work for us and we work for them. That's about it.
Well said. Any other reports? Councillor St. Pierre or McMahon? Councillor McMahon? You did a few things.
I did a lot of things, but one that I'll talk about just for the sake of time is I've been working a lot with the Sooke Fast Pitch Association and the Sooke Community Association, as well as the potential contractors for the improvements on the fields. So it's kind of like a little bit of the game of the chicken before the egg, and everybody stepping up. So far, it's been incredible, and there's some real traction happening right now. So it's the tricky situation with their proposal is that the fields in question are owned by the Sooke Community Association, but they're run by the Fast Pitch Association, and Sooke has grown exponentially. So we're getting closer and closer to a reasonable number. So the president of the Sooke Fast Pitch Association will be coming forward with an updated proposal, and I'm very, very excited about it.
Good work. Okay, I have a few items. I went to the Vancouver Island Regional Library Board annual general meeting on January 19th, same day as that treaty seminar, which I regret missing. As I said last week, a development permit application is due here. It may have arrived. It will be arriving shortly, I'm promised. for the new library, $7.5 million library on Lot A. I also attended my first meeting of the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice Committee, and that's a committee with at least 25 people were on it, counselors from municipalities, caseworkers, RCMP officers, a whole new realm for me, child labor laws, sexual assault. The good news is there's a West Shore division of the Victoria's Sexual Assault Center is being planned for the West Shore. So that's good news. The Film Commission breakfast. I had a day in the Emergency Operations Center training course. I think you did the full thing, Councillor McMath, so you're certified. This is the Emergency Operations Center here in the Municipal Hall. And yeah, I think there were you along with 20 other district staff members are trained up now and can be called at a moment's notice. They'll show up and deal with whatever calamity is coming to us. There was also, we were both at the Wild Salmon Advisory Council meeting in Langford back on January 10th. And that was quite a night for Sooke in that CRD Director Hicks is on that council. There were a lot of shout-outs for the Sooke Salmon Enhancement Society, 20.5 million fry released into the Sooke River since the late 70s, and a model example of a hatchery that works and is now getting the funding for its new facility. And then I had a couple of meetings with the Age Friendly Committee, where I've taken over for Councillor Casper. Andrew Moore is quarterbacking this multi-generational community center project on Lot A, ideally. We'll see how that unfolds. And Al Jones is continuing to lobby Premier Horgan for the enhanced driver program testing for seniors on the West Shore. That was a campaign, everyone has to drive out as far as Planet Organic out on Mackenzie to get their testing. And for seniors, just driving to Langford's, like I can testify, it's a bit hair-raising, if I had hair to raise. But anyway, there we go. So on that note, I think we're ready to, not quite, we're going to make a motion to close the meeting to the public, that this meeting be closed to the public under Section 91A, C, E, and I, and L of the Community Charter as it pertains to personal information about an identifiable individual, labor relations, land, legal advice, and preparation, or preparation of an annual report. So we're going to now move in camera. However, do we adjourn now the regular council meeting?
We just need someone to move that motion and second it.
Second.
Seconded and moved and seconded.
And then voted on.
All in favor?